Moving to in-sprint test automation, active requirements to maintainable test automation. Now, what we've seen in the industry is there's an awful lot of silos and information hops that happen during the software development lifecycle. As a result of this, we see ambiguous requirements, bugs being identified far too late, often when the system has entered production, QA being far too reliant on manual testing, and automation being created often 6 to 12 months after an application has been released. In this video, we're going to show you how you can achieve in-sprint test automation starting from software requirements. Business analysts and product owners create user stories and typically add them to a sprint backlog. When the user story is ready, it gets picked up and you can start to create dynamic requirements inside Test Modeler, specifying exactly how the system should be built. Before even a line of code is written, you can pick up these dynamic requirements and you can export them into your test case management tools like JIRA, Azure DevOps, Micro Focus to export your test scenarios. Once ready, developers can enter the fold, pick up these requirements and start to develop the application. Using Test Modeler, they can find and make the exact test data they need for their development and overlay these on the model. Eventually, their code will get committed and integrated into some kind of UAT environment. At this point, the test scenarios which were previously generated can be used against the definition of done for our user story. Once the software exists, testers can pick up the application and start to automate it. Within Test Modeler, we support a wide array of automation frameworks and accelerators for creating automation in open source and vendor-based tools. Once the automation has been created and generated, you can execute it as part of your CI/CD pipeline within the current integration. Let's start off by looking at an existing requirement and importing it. Okay, so we're just inside JIRA here, which is our chosen tool for defining our user stories and our requirements. Here we've got a new requirement for creating a new opportunities page. So a user can log into the application. A new menu is going to appear called opportunities, and they can click this to go to creating a new opportunity. And then there's various fields here that the user must input, like an opportunity name, an account name. And at the end, the user can either save the opportunity and create a new one or click the cancel button. So we're just inside Test Modeler here. And this is where we're going to start creating our models of our requirements. Now to do that, we can come into the connectors panel here and we're going to load up and connect to our JIRA instance for our user stories. Here we'll come in and select our JIRA story for creating new opportunities, and we're going to import this as a user story. This is where we enter our text importer, where we can come in and start to define the structure of our requirement and how we want this to be imported. So we'll just edit this a little bit just so we have the fields that we need and they're well structured. Okay, so we finished restructuring our requirement here. And what's basically going to happen is this requirement text is going to be mapped to a model. We can come in here and we can edit any of the blocks that we need to, the text, we can split them and we can define what kind of block we want these to be imported as. We're going to take this as is and we'll hit the import button, and what we get here is a linear model with all of our different actions embedded inside. Now what we need to do is we need to take this model and we need to chop it up to actually define our requirement of the system. So we've just spent about 10 minutes here tidying up our model and creating it into a bit more of a rigorous and comprehensive requirement. Now if you look at our initial requirement, it said what different fields we need to input, but it didn't really dictate what should happen when we don't enter a required field or what the expected results are for cancelling or saving the create opportunities page. So there's actually a few ambiguities in this requirement. Now what we've done is we've ironed these out in the model and we've really gone into detail over what happens when I enter bad data, when I get an error message, what are the different types of lead sources, what are the different types, what are the different currency codes that exist in my application, etc, etc. So we've transformed this textual based requirement into a much more structured requirement, which is much more complete and also has expected results embedded inside of when a new opportunity is created and when we end up in some kind of error. So we effectively have a visual image representing our requirement. Let's export some test cases. Once we have a model of the requirement, Even before a line of code is written, we can come in and generate our test cases. Here we're going to say, let's go off and generate the minimum number of tests to maximize coverage across our model, which in this case is 16 different routes that we can go through this page. We're going to take these and we're going to export them into a test case management system. In this case, we'll push them out into Xarray inside JIRA. Now we'll see here our export's complete. If we come in and do a refresh on the test suite here, all you'll see is that we've got links next to each of these paths. Now what this is saying is that for each of these we now have a JIRA that's been created and we know where that lives. Let's open some of these up and let's have a look at the test cases that have been produced. Here we'll see for an error message being displayed, we have all of these different test steps that have come out. So logging into the application, entering a name, entering an account name that does not exist, and we've got an expected result here for the error that comes through. And this is true for all of the tests that we've generated for our requirement. This is very useful since developers now have the tests. Let's develop the application. Now we're ready to develop our application, but we need some data to actually develop with. If we look at our requirement here, we need to enter a valid account name which exists in our backend database. And also we need to have a campaign that exists in our database as well. Within Test Modeler, what we've done is we've set up some data catalogs to go off and find the different types of data we need. So we can go off and find different account names from SQL Server, and we can go off and find different campaigns given a criteria of different campaign types and statuses. As a developer, I can come in and I can provision and retrieve the data I need for my testing. So I can come in here and I can say we want to find a campaign which is active, and we're going to use our criteria here to find campaigns, and we're going to go off and find a campaign which is of type email and active. We'll save this and run it, and this is going to come back with the test data we need for this specific scenario we're testing. And here we've got back an account name that we can use in our development and test environments. Now these data utilities are also available to be overlaid in the model. Here we need to go and find a valid account name. So we can come into our data catalogs view here. We can go into our CRM system and we can say go and find me an account name that I need, and we can import that block in, which is going to go and find an account. Now we can overlay these data utilities inside our model as well. So here we need a valid account name which exists. We can go off into our data catalogs, specify the function we want to consume, and import it in. And that's now going to go off and find a physical account name and overlay it on our model. And we've also done the same over here for campaigns, where we specified a specific campaign type of email and a specific campaign status of active, and plugged that into our data function here. If we look at our test cases now, what you'll see is that these have test data associated with them, and we can see the different account names and campaigns that have come back here for consumption for these different scenarios which we have. We'll now overlay and generate automation. Our application now exists and has been integrated into our UAT environment we have here. And we can see we've now got the create opportunities form that has been developed. What we need to do now is create the automation actions to go and interact with this page. To do that, we can use our accelerator here, our browser extension, to go into the page and start selecting the actions that we want to automate in our application and in our test scenarios. We'll select these, and then we can scan the save and cancel buttons and upload these into Test Modeler. Now, if we come over to Test Modeler and take a look, what we'll see is that in this create opportunities object that we just scanned, we've got the different objects we picked out, and we've got different automation identifiers here to go and pick out the objects on that particular screen. Now what we can do is we can use these in our model to start overlaying our automation. So all we need to do is on the right hand side navigate to the project which we're in, and we can select the actions we want to perform, and then we can start integrating the different activities. So the first thing we want to do here is go to the URL. We'll import that. We then need to enter an opportunity name, so we'll select our opportunity function, which is here, and we can import that, and we'll select to map that to an existing opportunity variable, and we can just keep going through our model, overlaying and integrating our automation actions to go through and add these automation actions to our model, as so. Now we've just spent a bit of time here including these automation actions in our model, and we'll see for each of the steps now we're now selecting from the combo boxes, entering data into inputs, and at the end we're clicking the save and cancel buttons. Now what's also interesting here is we already had a model for going through the login process, which contains all of our login functionality where we end up authenticated. This has our automation already embedded, so we've just chained this into our longer end-to-end flow. This is a really nice feature as it enables reusability. If you've got something you've already modeled before, you can just incorporate that into your existing model. Now what we can do is we can go off and we can generate our test cases, which is going to be the minimum number to maximize coverage across this end-to-end scenario. And we can now go off and generate our automation. Okay, so our task is now complete here. And if we take a look in our automation framework, what you'll see is all of the open source automation code, in this case in a Java framework, that has been created for going through our login process and then creating the different types of campaigns that we've specified through our model. If we come back in the model now and we just do a quick refresh, what we'll see is that we've now got run results overlaid on our model, which we can go in and interrogate. So let's take a look at one of these paths here. Let's go to results. We can see that passed. If we come in here and take a look, we'll see the different screens we're passing through and the different screenshots we've captured of our creates campaign page as we've gone through entering our different data combinations and different types. And we'll see here all of our tests have passed. So that's how we can go from a requirement in JIRA and how that requirement and model will flow throughout the software development lifecycle, and how we can create in-sprint test automation to keep up with our development. Thanks for watching this video. Visit testmodeler.io to start your free trial today.